What up? It's the Dropping Dimes podcast. I'm your host, Mark Veer, and welcome to episode number 23 with special guests and coaches Chris Dahl and Forrest Blackwell. Fellas, how we doing?
Well, Mark.
Good. That's good.
I appreciate you both coming on. I know you've listened to some of the previous podcasts, and we've kind of led up to this one as a exciting program that is now in San Antonio. Chris, you are the head coach at Texas A&M San Antonio, and Forrest, you're on his staff as an assistant coach. We will dive into that later throughout the podcast. But just some quick intros, kind of let the listeners know a little bit about yourself, your basketball kind of journey, your background, and what you're doing today. Coach Dow, we'll start with you.
Yeah, appreciate it, Mark. Thanks for having me on. Again, Chris Dial here. I'm from San Antonio. I grew up on the southeast side, played at East Central High School, and then played at Texas Lutheran in Seguin. And I've been coaching for a long time. I was a high school coach, kind of out of the gates. Some local schools, started at St. Gerard on the east side. I worked at New Braunfels High School and then McCollum High School as well. And then circled back around to John Paul II up in Sharps at one point in between stints overseas. So I've done a lot of work across the pond. I'm FIBA licensed, done a lot of clinic and development work, especially with FIBA Europe. And then, back here about 7 years ago, I got a 7-year-old son. Kind of brought me back home and was the men's coach at Our Lady of the Lake for 6 seasons. And then I slid over to Texas A&M San Antonio in the spring of 24.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Same question for you, Coach Blackwell.
Spent time playing at East Central and St. Gerard's. I actually played for this man right here at St. Gerard's. Ended up graduating from Sam Houston High School. Did some time at Texas Southern in Houston. And as far as when the coaching career started, I was around about 23 years old. I started Little League Taifa. I started with the AAU program called SA Wolfpack when I was an assistant there with Bo Wolford. And then I found my first high school job at John Paul II, where I was an assistant for 2 years on the men's side and the girls' side. Again, with this guy right here, Chris Dial. And then I took over the program, and I was the head coach there for 8 years. So that put me at a decade where I was at John Paul II on the high school level, which coincided with me owning my AAU program, Shirts Cowboys, which I've been operating for about 12 years now. My last 2 years, I've been on the collegiate level as an assistant coach and helping in the recruiting section of college ball.
All right. Appreciate you both sharing that. First kind of topic I want to talk about, Coach Dow. Let's talk a little bit about the basketball embassy. Kind of let everybody know about it. I know we talked a little bit off pod. You've got a lot of ties over in Europe. I'm from Europe. My twin brother in England. So it was kind of good to talk about that. I'm going to get you guys reconnected. But just let everybody know how that came about and just educate people on your basketball embassy.
Yeah, I appreciate it. The basketball embassy is for all intents and purposes here, it's a 501c3 nonprofit organization that basically connects communities and then grows and develops young people through the sport of basketball. It's a development organization at heart. It's very geared around the fundamental elements of basketball, but the majority of the kids that the organization engages are non-elite athletes. Like here in San Antonio, we primarily work with homeless youth. So we're 4 days a week at a couple of different sites, Sam Ministries and Haven for Hope. We're always looking for volunteers. We've had a ton of high school coaches come out, bring their teams, captains, whatever, spend some time with these kids. But it's the feel-good part of the sport. Across the pond, it's been a lot more technical development, almost consulting, especially for national federations that are developing. So I had an opportunity back in 2008, I believe. I started to engage with the Turkish Basketball Federation through a mutual contact, and I just packed a passport and a backpack and went over there for a month, and that just grew over the course of a decade into a formal role with their federation. A youth technical director for a country of 83 million opened up a lot of doors for me. So I started working in you name it, Eastern Europe, Middle East, just have basketball, will travel type stuff. But the organization was kind of born out of those travels. And so I think we formalized it in 2014. So it's about 11 years old. And it's been great. It's been a good compliment as well to being a collegiate coach here in the States. The mission of the organization is often married to the mission of an institution of higher education anyway. So it's a fairly easy synergy. But yeah, I've been real fortunate to see a lot of the planet through basketball.
Yeah, I love it. And we'll dive more into like European style basketball and recruiting, because I was fortunate enough to get over here when I was 17 years old from England. And I'm still very connected back home. So I just love the ties between Europe and America, and kind of the way the game has shifted a little bit to a lot more European playing over here and the opportunity. So it'd be nice to kind of touch on that a little bit later in the podcast. All right. So my next question, and Coach Blackwell, will start with you. And I apologize, but this will be a good one for you, is that every guest we've had on, we've asked, where do you feel San Antonio basketball is today? And it's a loaded question. You can tackle it from grassroots to AAU to high school. I do want to say this, though, and we were laughing about it earlier, about having social media wars, is there's this concept out here that this podcast has been saying that we are down from the high school level. I can tell you that is not the case, right? Even me and Coach Dahl were talking about how many teams are still rolling right now, even from the lower levels. We got Cole going, St. Anthony's, Antonian, and then obviously the bigger powerhouses, Brennan still rolling, Harlan still, etc. So I don't think we're hurting from the high school level. I think we do a very good job here in San Antonio from a state perspective, getting teams to the regionals, state finals, boys and girls. But we have talked about from the AAU side, it's obviously grown a lot. You just discussed your church program. You and I met when I had my Admirals and you had your Wolfpacks, and those were some fun battles, man. Those were, and I learned a lot about you, how passionate you were. A fantastic coach, right? So I would like to hear it from you from the AAU perspective, where you feel San Antonio is today. You've been in the trenches quite some time. You've seen it change. So where are we at on this?
Yeah, like you said, me and you met over 12 years ago, 12, 13 years ago on the AAU side. So, I've definitely seen it over the last decade. Me, the position that I've been in over a decade is I was able to have 2 feet in high school coaching and then get right out of it and have 2 feet in AAU. So I was in both worlds, for my entire career. So I definitely got to see the difference between the two. Um, and I'll say this, I think at one point, the AAU world was seen as more competitive than the high school world. And I think that's flipped. Not to say better or worse, but I think that's flipped. I think what happened is the AAU world has become so saturated with it's just so many different teams, there's so many different programs. And not to say guys aren't, qualified or they're not doing their job or they don't have the right intentions for these young athletes. But I believe that with so many options, it doesn't allow us to have the type of teams that we once had in San Antonio. And then the staff also breaks up when it comes to that, right? So like when players leave, guys go make their own teams, guys go create their own organizations, which, to each his own. I mean, we all want our own one someday. Most of us do. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think the oversaturation has played a part in, I would say, the product on the AAU side, pound for pound. And like you alluded to, I don't think that people are coming up here saying that it sucks or guys aren't doing a good job or programs aren't, creating and developing kids, because that's a part of why the high schools, I think the high school seasons and the high school teams are doing better. We work hand in hand, both work hand in hand, scratch each other's back. But just the oversaturation has made it difficult for it to flourish the way it once was when when I think San Antonio had multiple premier teams. I think we still have teams that can go play anywhere, and we got kids that can go play anywhere. But, it's the saturation and the options have made it difficult for it to thrive the way the high schools are thriving if we can compare both of them.
Yeah, I agree. A great answer. Here's my add-on question to you is, what are some possible solutions to get AAU back to how competitive it was? Coach Mo said from the Raiders, there's not as much in-town rivalries. We had a rivalry, Wolfpack Admirals, right? I remember back in the day, there was pockets of teams
Exactly.
that would want to play each other, right? Someone said it. Some other people said that people may be ducking teams, not avoiding it, or they want to maybe not play in San Antonio. Booman said that he takes some fault for not playing. So what do you think some solutions are to get AAU a little more competitive and get those local rivalries back? How do you think we go about that?
I think again, it comes down to saturation, right? That's a big problem. And then just the culture of today is, kids go from team to team, which is fine, to each his own. You got to create your own path. And as parents, when you're paying money, it's your decision and your decision only to make sure that your kid is getting the best that he can do, right? It's not, you can't do it forever. So you got to take advantage when you can. You got that kind of would have to stop. to a certain degree. There would just have to be a little bit more standstill. And like I say, it's hard to do that when you got so many options. But I would like to point something out, as far as your answer go. I remember when my staff and Reagan's staff was selected to represent San Antonio in Jordan Clarkson's All-Star game, right? It's San Antonio versus Austin. Our John Paul II staff and Reagan staff were selected to represent the San Antonio side. That was in 2022. All right, if you think about the kids that was in 2022, this what sticks out in my mind when it comes to solution. You had Austin Nunez. You had Trey from Reagan. You had Jordan Mason from Clark. You had Kevin from Wagner. You had Dion from Brennan. You had Kendall from Johnson. The team was loaded. You had Silas. You had young Silas. You had Trey. Both of them from Cole. That 2022 group was very, very solid. And you had even guys that weren't on. You had my guy Matt Quaylar, who was a big for me at the time, who had a tremendous senior year. All the guys that got selected for that group. If you look at that picture, at some point, a lot of them played together as youth. Whether it was hard work, whether it was any other program, a lot of them played together as youth. As they grew older, they start to separate, and that's kind of what we do as a whole. I think everybody tries to pick their own path, and everybody tries to pick the new circuit, or everybody tries to find, a better schedule, or to say they're doing this and everybody else is doing that. So what that does is that separates all of us. When I saw that 2022 team, as I'm watching them at practice, and then after we took the picture, it was just hard for me to understand why that team wasn't traveling together their whole junior year.
Yep. Yeah, great answer. I think it all comes down to community, right? Boo Man said on the very first podcast, we've lost a little bit of community, or everybody's doing their own thing, to your point, options. So that's a great answer. I truly believe you're right. If people can come together, credible people that have been doing this a long time, and just, look out for the city as far as that aspect. I do like that you said high school has kind of taken over AAU. I remember when I first got here, the Rohawks days. I mean, AAU was crazy. I remember watching those games. It's I think it's a fair point to say, and I agree with that. So yeah, good stuff. We'll just keep talking about it. The more credible guests we have on here, we're just trying to get this information out to San Antonio, and I think we're headed in the right way. Mike Daniels obviously is heavily involved in this. I think he's doing some good stuff over there to try to create more local and stuff. Yeah, I appreciate that. All right, let's shift gears and let's talk about Texas A&M San Antonio. So Coach Dahl, we'll start with you. Talk to us how about this opportunity came up for you and all the kind of things you've got going on over there. This is the first coaching staff. I was excited to see it, and just how your first year went and the direction you guys are going.
Yeah. It's I think a lot of local people don't even realize kind of what's going on down there, south of 410. It's a side of town that if you're from, it, but if you're not, you're probably not going there. I mean, people aren't migrating from Stone Oak to go look at Christmas lights or anything, but it's incredible. And if you haven't been to the campus, I can't really overhype it. It'll wow you. It's an NCAA Division I campus with an NAI budding athletic program. So it's pretty awesome. They're doing some great things too. Infrastructurally, there's a new hospital going up. There's an 800 home series of subdivisions with the same builders that build in, I mentioned Stone Oak, but up the 281 corridor. It's just a little different for the South Side. So those retail spaces are coming, and some of your more affluent coffee shops and restaurants and bars and all that stuff will follow. It's pretty incredible. The A&M campus in the A&M system, San Antonio is the largest metropolitan area that they have a campus in. So you can imagine how much money they're dumping into the development of this school. It's one of the few schools that shows upward growth and trends right now. Higher education is tough. It's a tough time to be a college in the United States, economically, politically, you name it. But A&M San Antonio continues to grow and trend against, most universities. But as far as the basketball program goes, man, they've been talking about bringing basketball on for a couple of years. It was actually slotted to come in this upcoming season, 25-26. It was one of those rare occurrences, man, where the gym got finished, construction timeline preceded the start of the school year. We have a really forward-thinking president, a great visionary, and he was like, we're going to have a gym. Let's get basketball rolling. It wasn't really my intention necessarily to kind of seek out and go after, an opportunity to build this program, but it started to kind of surface organically a little bit. And I was in a good place at Our Lady of the Lake. That's still really close to my heart. My team from last year is playing here in about an hour in the Red River Athletic Conference tournament in Alexandria, Louisiana. So I'm rooting for those guys. You mentioned staff, Forrest coming over with me, David Smith coming over with me. The other half of our staff, which I thought was, biased obviously, but I thought it was one of the best collegiate staffs, not just in the city, but in the state. But half of the staff stayed at Our Lady of the Lake. So those guys are over there doing their thing and doing really well. And nowadays we have to get that going in a similar fashion and see success on and off the floor. So they when they decided to do basketball, man, I got a phone call. I was encouraged to come have a conversation. I did, and I was honestly, Mark, I was lucky. I got lucky that they believed in my ability to build a program, and things kind of looked like it would make sense. So I jumped in. So it's going well. Second part of your question was kind of how first season went. Definitely did not go like any of us wanted it to in terms of, as a competitor, you want to win as many games as you can. As somebody that's done this for 2.5 decades, you also understand that, there's a timeline to things. And, I'm a process oriented guy. I'm not really a rewards driven, goal centered guy. You got to measure success a lot of different ways when you're coaching. And I don't care if it's, coaching a bunch of, fifth graders, or it's coaching a bunch of, college student athletes. So we were successful on a lot of fronts because we put our best foot forward and we kind of got the train on the tracks and moving. But we lost a lot of really close games this year. We looked like a first year program playing a lot of really young guys. If you came to any of our games, it was, it definitely didn't embody an established program that had, system is in place. Everything looks like it's running on all cylinders. We were not that program this year, but that's the goal. So we did collect a good group of young men, guys that you wouldn't mind having in your home and acting right. We did approach goals on, and we're going to achieve goals on things like team GPA, how much we were out in the community, that kind of stuff, which are important when you're establishing culture or an ethos. But we're actively recruiting right now. We got to get better. We got to get better with what we have. And then we got to go get players that can come in and contribute immediately, because we're not, although we understand this takes time, we're definitely not shedding a mindset that, hey man, we got plenty of time. It's not a big deal if we don't make the tournament next year or whatever. Our plan is to beat that curve and get out there and play some postseason games.
Okay, yeah, thanks for touching on that. We did talk a little off pod. I didn't ask how the season went. I could just tell how competitive you are, but I love the mindset that you have, right? Is that you understand that it's a process, it's going to take some time. But I love what you guys are doing over there. Great staff. I'm excited for this. I think it's great for San Antonio. I remember when this all came about, Forrest, you hit me up and said, hey, San Antonio has all levels here. And we talked a little bit off pod too. So this question will be for you, but let's just kind of talk about that, right? We've talked on other podcasts about kids not staying home. Do you feel like having this new, college in town, now we have levels from NIAI all the way up to Division I, a lot of different pockets, and we're not producing on the boys' side a ton of Division I athletes. I think that's okay. I think we need to produce more college athletes. What do you think? What do you think this does for potentially, because we have a lot of listeners, parents and kids that are from San Antonio. What does that do for them?
It just opens up the door for more opportunities. Like what I alluded to and when I pointed out months ago is, now you have 2 D1s. You have 2 NAIAs. You have a D2. So that alone is 5 scholarship-based schools. So you got 5 opportunities to get either your tuition paid for or some of your tuition paid for, or you have an opportunity to walk on and become a guy that maybe is not getting any money through an offer and earn that spot, while being at home. So you got 5 opportunities there. You can do the math. If there's 18 roster spots times 5. And then you have, if you want to jump down to D3, you got Trinity. If you want to count Texas Lutheran, you're talking seven schools as far as San Antonio surrounding area. Is everybody going to be able to stay home and play basketball? No. Are all these programs only going to recruit San Antonio kids? No. Right. But what it can do is with all this opportunity here, what you have to do as a parent and as a kid, which I thought we did a beautiful job this year. And it's something that our staff really set out to do, whether these kids would be signing with us or not, or whether we would be heavily recruiting these kids or not. come offer time is you gotta come out. You get a chance to come out to games. You get a chance. So, when high schools are playing on Tuesdays and Fridays, you got Thursday and Saturday games now. You got college campuses, different levels where you can go watch. You can get acclimated with the staff. You can rub hands and politic in a way and get to know people. Now you got 5 different open gyms. You got 6 different universities that'll host workouts, have open runs in the summer where you get to go and meet guys and play with guys. And then my last thing is the biggest thing is what Texas A&M San Antonio gives you, and what it adds to the San Antonio culture of basketball is now as a parent and as a kid, you need to take advantage of watching stuff that's under D1, because what happens is these kids and these parents, they only see D1 basketball. So you get this, and I was subject to it as a kid too. If it's not D1, I feel I can play. I feel I can play. I feel I can go anywhere and play anywhere if it ain't D1, right? Because you only see D1. So you get this misconception that anything under D1 you can relate to, and that's totally false. So what the best advantage you can take of is go watch these games outside of the recruiting and outside of getting in touch and emailing and contacting coaches. You can go watch these games and really get a sense of reality as far as what level you're actually on. Outside of JUCO, we got everything you want, and you can actually go watch that level and really see what the bodies look like, the athletes look like, the style of play, the pace of the game, what type of style of coaching, and you can really get that feel and get a real identity about yourself as a basketball player. And I think that's what's most important on having all levels in San Antonio and multiple teams at them levels.
Yep, absolutely love it. And what I wrote down is I put Trinity Soccer. So I've watched all basketball levels. I've been fortunate enough to referee at all levels from middle school to D1. So I get to see it firsthand. But from a soccer standpoint, I played in England a bunch. I was actually a better soccer player, but I'd never watched a college game out here. And I took my son last year to watch Trinity Soccer, Division III program. I didn't know what to expect. I had a bunch of guys from England there too, which was cool. Man, that was some good soccer. I hate to say soccer, it's football, but I was shocked. I told my wife, I said, wow, Division III is no joke. These are some really, really good players. So I 100% agree. We've talked about in other podcasts, players, parents, you need to get out and watch all levels. We had a high school coach that watched their first Division III game and was like, wow, this is really good. So even people in this space need to also get more educated as well. So it's a great answer. Anybody listening, I agree, Forrest, get out there, watch games. And to your point, Thursday, Saturdays in town, and they're free. Most of them are free to get in. So not a ton of money.
Yeah.
So yeah, great stuff. All right, let's dive into recruiting. So Coach Dahl, for you, let's talk about, we've talked on a bunch of podcasts about it's really hard for high school kids now to get recruited, right? We got transfer portals, NIL deals, the JUCO rule that's, I guess, still pending, but it did happen this past year. So let's talk about, a bunch of questions. But the first one is, what do you look for in a high school player? And then we can talk about the transfer portal as well. And then we'll just dive into this.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm glad you finally got to a Trinity game, Mark. McGinley over there, that dude's like a legend, man. He's been recruiting European players for like 30 years. He hails from there too.
You see it, man. Great program.
But man, like in the basketball, like Coach, Jimmy Smith over there, man, there's so many high school. I'm a high school coach, like at heart. And so a lot of these guys still coaching high school are not just colleagues, but dear friends of mine. And there is a huge misconception, man. Go watch Trinity play. You don't want any part of that. There's a reason that they threaten, D1s and D2s all the time. If I'm a D2, I'm not playing Trinity. I'm not playing Jimmy Smith. They're going to platoon sub. They're going to shoot it at 40 from 3, and they're going to outbeat themselves. So you got a huge misconception about the level of basketball here. I would argue most kids in the city can't play at Trinity. And that's a a D3 program, and it carries all that negative connotation. It's ridiculous. But kind of liaisoning back into, or transitioning back into that question about recruits. We're going to say a lot of things that I think most college coaches are going to say, but for us, sincerely placing a premium on just general coachability, like toughness is like almost non-existent, and it's hard to find. And so we are placing a premium on tough, willing to be coached young men, and figuring out whether that's who they are is tough. That's the trick in recruiting now. It's not as easy to just go watch a game or see a player get film on a guy and just understand like, oh yeah, he's going to be a great fit for us. Because what any joker can do is watch somebody play and say, oh, he's really good. This guy can make shots. He can defend. He's athletic. He's skilled. Like, I mean, my mom can watch a game and tell me if a kid is a good player or not. You know what I mean? But it's peeling back. Like, is that good player going to show up every day and work as hard as he can? You know, is that good player going to be early on time? Is that good player gonna be a consummate yes sir, no sir type guy? Is he gonna be a good teammate? How, you know, what's he gonna be like off the floor? And so as we're looking at players, we're constantly trying to assess coachability and toughness. We're looking for guys that have some inherent resilience, that are going to respond to adversity well. Some of the best talent in our city is also the worst at responding to adversity. So it's hard to go find the most talent. You know, coaches come, why didn't you guys look at so-and-so, man? He's killing it. He's doing this. And I'm like, well, yeah, I watched him play. And half the game he spent barking at the ref. The other half the game he spent barking at the other team's bench. And then it's just very theatrical, very European football, like one bump, I'm on the ground for 4 minutes. The trainers checked on me 7 times. I mean, Mark, I go to games and these high school trainers are at the end of the bench fanning guys' necks, and I'm like, okay, well, I can't coach that kid. Like, because no one in my program is going to fan the back of your neck because you're too hot. I'm just not going to do that. So there's just limits on who we can go get or who we want to go get. But we're looking for tough kids, man. We want kids that are going to show up to work, find some joy in their heart playing the game that I love. I don't want you to ruin the game for me. So, you know, that's kind of what we've tried to place a premium on. And then, you know, outside of that, we're looking for everybody that everybody else is. Do you have a skill level? Do you have a talent? Are you elite at anything? And how can you come in and impact our program?
Yeah, I love it. I love that most of the answer was nothing to do with the kid if they can play or not. Like, to your point, we know if you can play, but it's the intangible stuff that really matters. Okay, yeah, I love it. Next thing for you, Forrest, is still talking about recruiting. I know you're heavily in the recruiting process as well. Let's talk about the transfer portal and high school kid. Let's just talk about both of those, right? Are you guys, because it's all over social media, it's all over the internet, that college coaches don't want high school players. That's what they're saying. They don't want them. They would prefer to go with a transfer kid, someone that's older, more mature. Even if they didn't play as much, they could be limited minutes and play 2 years JUCO. What are you guys doing over there? What are your thoughts on both of those? And I'm sure you're having discussions with transfer portal kids versus kids coming out of high school.
I think the word is preferred. You know, I think you know, especially in NAIA and in Red River Conference, the word is preferred. You know, you prefer a transfer. You prefer somebody out of the portal. You prefer someone that is going to school, because if and this is what I talk to high school kids and high school coaches about. This is one of the examples I want to make as far as answering the question. A high school kid is going to school his senior year, 8 a.m. Let's say classes start at 8 a.m. Finishes at 3:30. Then he has practice after 3:30. Might have an athletic period. He got practice. Then he's going home. He got work. You know, probably get home around 6. Got work. If you want to try to fit in some time to work on your game, you got to try to find that. But regardless, he's at school from 8 in the morning till 3 or 4 in the afternoon. Right between every class, you got 5 minutes to get to class. There is no time to do nothing else. You know, you're going to 7 classes in that one day, and you got your practice. So this college kid that might be at a JUCO, you know, might be at a 4-year university, just removed out of high school, maybe got your same accolades. He's now in a situation to where he's going to class at 9 a.m. and then he got a break till 12. Then he's got another break maybe till, 4. He got his practice in between time, but then what you think he doing in between 9 and 12 and 12 and 4 when he ain't at practice, or what he's supposed to be doing, right? He's in the weight room. He's in the gym. He's living at this college regimen. So I think it just makes sense to go get that guy with the rules that are in place now. Now that's not to say that high school kids can't earn a spot or get a spot, but this is what they need to start understanding. And this is the hard concept to come across. Like when you a high school kid and you get that offer, when people post that offer or they say they got offered, a lot of times that offer is coming with no money. There's no money attached to that offer. There's other things in play, whether it's your financial aid, whether it's your grants, whatever you got going on academically. And these are even at 4-year universities, right? And that's something that they have to start to realize, and parents have to start understanding that when it comes down to the lower levels outside of D1s who have an amount of scholarships to give, when it comes to the other levels, there's a budget, and that money is going to go to the preferred rather than the other. You can get a spot on the team. You can be good enough to play on this team, but the investment might not be in you right now. That investment might have to wait. And that's the reality of it when it comes down to, high school.
And,
Okay.
and Mark, one thing
Right.
on that too, Forrest hit like a really good point is for parent, like if there are parents that, kind of tuning in, even now D1 having 15, there are a lot of coaches that are using their last 3 scholarships they're actually recruiting a 15th guy. Your 15th guy can't be a guy that is trying to compete with your number 3 guy for the same minutes. That's not a real functional 15th guy. You got to go through a whole season with him, and it's just going to be headaches, and it's going to be blown expectations, and there's going to be body language, and there's going to be inconsistency and energy and effort and being a good team. A 15th guy better be the best teammate you have in your program. He better be a show up early, leave late guy. He better be able to tutor your power forward on a road trip because he's got a math test that he has no idea what's going on. Your 15th guy has a role. Parents need to understand. I get hit by even college, high school coaches. They're like, man, so-and-so signed D1. You guys didn't even look at him. Like, well, yeah, now like you're going to get some D1 guys, quote unquote D1 guys that are going to be a 15th guy. The 2 lonely white kids at the end of Duke's bench every year have always been like future Fortune 500 CFOs and CEOs, and, they're networked the right way. Krzyzewski had to, put money in the bank before NIL was a thing, all these things. Well, now those guys can be full ride scholarships, but they're not going to get to play. They're still going to have to perfect the art of towel waving and high fiving and, ultimate energy and, all that stuff. So even down at our level, to Forrest's point, like if we offer a kid, what we're really offering a kid is a limited roster spot. We're offering them an opportunity. An offer for us could be a full ride scholarship, but it could also be a $0 athletic dollars. Right. And it's still going to translate on social media as an offer. And I just, I wanted to mention that because sometimes like kids will post, hey, man, I got, blessed to receive an offer from, well, parents immediately equate that. High school coaches are like, oh, dude's already got a full ride offer. No, he doesn't. No, he does not. He actually has $0 athletic money. He's, hopefully he's getting financial aid and some academic money. And so there's a big misconception there. And coaches are going to fill out a roster. But like for us, Forrest mentioned, we have 18 roster spots. My 18th guy is going to have to embody certain characteristics that my number 1 guy does not do. And so we all want these to be high character young men that operate with integrity and show up early and leave late. We all want that. But I don't need my 18th guy believing that he's the 5th guy. So my 16, 17, and 18 guy are probably inherently going to be more self-aware than anybody else on the roster. Otherwise, it makes no sense for them to be there. You know what I mean? They're just going to be frustrated. Does it mean I don't want them to compete for that number 5 spot? No, they need to be chopping people down, showing why they deserve it, all those things. But when they come in, they're going to know I'm the 18th guy. Like I'm the 17th guy. I'm the 16th guy. I'm at the bottom of the totem pole. I'm not at the top, So I just think that's a big misconception, with people in general that aren't in the business of making offers and things like that.
Yeah, love it. Great answer. It reminds me of Jackson Young. I know, as far as you know him, but Jackson Young now is at SMU. He is that. He embodies being everything that you just said. And also, what came to mind is I think it's the same in high school. You're still going to have some roster kids understanding their role. Maybe the kid does. Maybe the coach does explain it, but the parents don't. So that's a whole nother topic for that. But it's great stuff. I know I talked to a coach about high school kids really having to take care of their bodies now. You've got to come on campus not looking like a 17-year-old, right? Now you're competing against 22-year-olds. That's something you can control. I'm not saying you got to get in the weight room at 14 years old and get ginormous, but you've got to really start taking care of your body because you're competing against kids 3, 4, 5 years older than you. And to your point, right out of high school, if you want to play college, you got to be ready. They don't have time to be like, well, what's he going to look like his junior year? I think that's really transparent, honest conversations coming from college coaches that are talking about kids every single day. So you guys are talking about recruiting. So it's a great conversation to have. I appreciate it. All right, last question for you, Dial. Then we'll dive into some Q&As. Let's talk about your background. We did touch it earlier about you being all over the planet, which is awesome. So you've seen a lot from a basketball standpoint, philosophies. Just talk about how that kind of affects what you go about in your daily kind of routines and how you coach your program over there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to quantify like how it's affected me just as a human, but then also as a basketball coach. It just my time traveling, my time overseas, the contractual work I've done with multiple national federations and then clubs and youth to pros and everything in between is definitely enlightened me quite a bit, I think, in certain ways that actually make it difficult at times to coach here in the United States. There's probably, is the right type of guy to be on my staff because he's known me his whole life, and he can kind of pick through some of that frustration that I carry, with our system here in the States, or lack of, for that matter. And then just, how to approach development. That word is used. It's almost like a bad word for me, here. When I hear development in the States, I feel like I should change that word, or it should be spelled differently, because it doesn't mean the same thing it means in Serbia, and it doesn't mean the same thing it means in Latvia or Canada, for that matter. It's just different. But again, I don't mean to speak about it like it's a negative thing. I'm just super, super fortunate to have been to the places that I've been, and to kind of humbly been able to experience basketball, on right now on 4 continents. So it just it's really shaped my philosophies and what I kind of what I try to do here. Is almost like an American experiment, to try to get us to play, better basketball, and to be a little more savvy about how the game is supposed to look. And so we, but all that said, I think the cultural piece is probably the biggest advantage. I mean, most Americans don't travel outside of the United States. We're fortunate to have this incredible country where if you want palm trees, you can find them. You want mountaintops, you can find it. You want a desert, you want everything in between, rivers, lakes, you name it, cold weather, hot weather, different types of food. The South is very different than the North. The East is very different than the West. I mean, we got a whole little world over here. But the problem is we tend to not get outside of our own borders. The cultural exchanges, the impacts and influences that I've had with, just countless communities is probably the biggest benefit. And it's what I try to offer and share, with the young men that I get to spend seasons with, is to hopefully challenge their perspective a little bit, about themselves and about the way they kind of view the world. We always try to challenge our guys to sort of be, informed but not influenced. That was something one of my former assistants, Dustin Carr, used to always say. He's up at Austin Brentwood. They're playing in the state tournament coming up too. But yeah, I mean, super fortunate to have been able to do all those things, and then super fortunate to have developed a really unique network that spans, multiple countries and cities and clubs and professional organizations and you name it. So I still try to hold on to that and not run away from that as I get buried into my work here in San Antonio.
I got a follow-on question for you. So what do you think maybe the most lacking skill USA players have to European players, or some advice for even younger athletes? Would you feel they need to probably focus more on that you've seen over your years in different countries?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think even a tangible skill. I think for the most part, this is obviously a generalization, because I know you'll get the pokes, and then somebody will hit me on social media like, "Hey, idiot, this is," so these are generalizations, right? Which are dangerous because they're going to include people that don't deserve them, right? But I would say pound for pound, most kids growing up in a formidable system across the pond understand how to shoot the basketball. They understand how to pass the basketball. Passing is the forgotten fundamental in the US. We don't pass the ball. Coaches don't even teach two-handed chest passes anymore because there's no place for it in the game or whatever. But then I'll watch a highlight of Steve Nash, zipping a cross-court transition pitch ahead, which analytically is one of the best leads to a high point per possession. But anyway, we don't teach that stuff. Coaches don't know how to teach passing, and coaches don't understand how to teach shooting. There's a lot of faux coaches right now over here. They're like, oh, you got to feel, you got to do this. I mean, I watch NBA trainers and it's crazy. If you're growing up as a 15-year-old in Lithuania and mechanically you can't shoot the basketball, you don't exist. You're just not going to play basketball. You're going to go find football. You're going to go to handball. You're going to play volleyball. You're going to do something else. So we lack certain skills generally. Like there's kids that we talked about, Kingston, Mark, offline. And like if Kingston had grown up in Lithuania, he would be shooting at 45 from 3 right now. And what would that kid, with all of his God-given ability and talent and his mental fortitude, what would he look like shooting at 45 from 3? I don't know. You know what I'm saying? So, but I think that the skill that we lack the most is going to be tied into intangible things. Kids here don't understand how to play basketball. Like the thing that I struggle the most with our players is shot selection. They don't understand the difference between a bad and a good shot and a good and a great shot. And this isn't Chris Dial's opinion on what a good shot is. It is backed analytically and statistically over time with volumes of information that says a dribble up contested mid-range is not a good shot in basketball. It is just not. Like we have guys that are really good at it, but then we want to define by an outlier versus defining by an accumulation of a lot of information, right? We know that a catch and shoot baseline 3 is a really great shot in the United States. What we don't understand is that because at the NBA level, that is the shortest shot distance-wise that you can get 3 points for, whereas overseas and anywhere else in the world, it is not. It is the same distance as everywhere else. So we don't know the why behind what we're doing most of the time. We have a hard time understanding like situational things and why it was okay on that possession for you to attack the basket, but why it didn't make sense on the other one. And then tied into that, just IQ and general understanding, our kids just lack a lot of mental fortitude, man. Kids overseas generally, again, a generalization, they don't play behind the ball as much. They don't get stuck behind the ball. They don't have their palms in the air as much. Like they're in the next play more often than they're not. And kids here are in the last play more often than they're not, in my opinion. Our next play speed as a country has to rank among the worst in the world. And we see it at the NBA level. We see it in USA basketball. We see it at the highest level. We are not mentally tough enough to continue to play through adversity the way that kids are being brought up to play in other countries. I was in Zambia in April. We were playing on dirt. A lot of the kids didn't have shoes, but you know what they didn't do? When one of their little buddies fouled the heck out of them while they were trying to shoot a layup, they didn't stop. Look at me for help. Look at him for committing this atrocious crime. You know what? They just kept playing because they enjoy playing basketball. You know what I mean? And that was a really sharp realization for me, being in a sub-Saharan African country with almost zero infrastructure for basketball and watching these kids just continue to play and be in the next play and be in the next possession and be in the next, in the moment, and not let some adversity that happened over the course of this, again, child's game, stop them from doing what they were doing. So I think that's, again, could go on and on, but like, I think we lack some IQ. I think we lack some mental fortitude. The way I think the game should be played is not the way we play it here most of the time. And so I do struggle with that. And then I do feel like sometimes like an outlier in the business, because I don't want to watch a guy dribble it 22 times per possession. I just don't.
Well, thank you. It's very refreshing to hear that, because everything you were saying, I feel exactly the same. I talk to Chip England 2-3 times a week, and we always have.
Said hello when you
I will.
talk.
Yep. And we have very similar conversations. He always says that shooting is a premium. That's it. If you can't shoot, forget about it. Of course, he's one of the best shooting coaches in the world, but he's supposed to say that, but I agree. We talk a lot about passing. Most undervalued skill is just, they don't know. Steve Nash was my favorite player, still is my all-time favorite player. We talk a lot about IQ as well, that kids don't understand why they're doing certain things in certain situations. I love what you said. And I tell our kids that every day at camp, who knows how to play basketball? And they all raise their hand. I said, none of you do. None of you have any idea. And they look at you like, what do you mean? Like, just because you run up and down, you dribble, pass, and shoot, that's not playing basketball. Refreshing to hear from someone that has been doing this a lot longer than me, has been in many, many countries. It brings back good days for me in Europe. So I appreciate you touching that. It's great nuggets. And anybody listening, I 100% back that. And I think it's a really good message for people to listen to. So, all right, let's dive into some Q&A. I'll just do 3 of them, and then we'll close on some quick hitters. So first one for you, Coach Blackwell, is advice for young coaches. You were once one. Now we can call you somewhat of a vet, but just advice for any. And this actually came from someone that's about to graduate from high school. So we're talking young. This is someone that's like, so we're any advice for them trying to get involved in coaching?
I took a unique route, so I just feel like you got to be passionate. You really have to love the sport. I think it'll do you justice if I was blessed to be around some of the greatest coaches the cities have seen. Growing up in high school with the 3 different high schools I went to, and just being able to watch them operate and build relationships with them guys, even past high school, even on the football side, I was under some Hall of Famers. So just being able to realize that, have a passion for it, get involved with the youth, because that's where your love's going to be. That's how, that's how you exude your love and really show it. Get involved with the youth early. Once you're done with college and once you get your degree, you'll find yourself in a position to apply for certain jobs and to go get certain jobs. And, you just want to do that, but you also want to be calculated in how you do that. Right. And when you get to the level where you can start coaching high school ball and you can become somebody's assistant, if you aren't, given that head coaching job right off the rip. My biggest advice to any coach is if you are going in as an assistant, you need to make sure that you respect and admire and have you look at your head coach and you fully 100% trust that man or woman. Because if you don't, that is going to be, you're going to spend a year not learning nothing.
Yeah, I love it. And I was even going to say that I've seen you excel in both roles. Mm-hmm. As a really good young head coach and an awesome assistant coach. So that's great advice for anybody listening. And that's what, as in all walks in life. I was thinking about referees do the same thing. They don't respect the mentors they go work with. They get on the phone and start bashing them. I'm like, I'll tell you a quick story. There's a referee that has probably worked, 10,000 games, been around for 50 something years. When I was growing up, I had an opportunity to work with him. I'll be honest, he's not a good official. I'm just being real. However, he has worked so many games and been through so many experiences that I don't think any referee in the world would be able to go through those type of things. And I made sure every time he talked, I listened to him. I didn't care if he was making bad calls on the floor. I knew I could learn something from him because of the reps and the experience he had. And I think in today's world, a lot of these younger just generation, it don't even have to be coaches, anything in life, I just don't think they respect how much work and life lessons and experience people have. So I really appreciate you touching that. That's great advice for young coaches. Great stuff, Forrest. All right, I'll do last question for you, Dial. 2 parts to it, and then we'll dive into some quick hitters. So the first one is going to be, I'm going to say it just how it is. We talked about it. Can you ask Dial why he prefers overseas kids instead of local kids? I feel like he's always done that. There it is.
Yeah, I get that a lot, honestly. I don't prefer overseas kids, but I do prefer kids that handle adversity better than not. I do prefer kids that have high IQs. And then one thing that didn't come out earlier was I have a hard time coaching entitlement. I just do. Like it's a fault of mine. Entitlement turns me away. As a teacher, there's every learner is different, and your job is to teach everybody in your classroom. Entitled kids as a teacher bothered me because they weren't a willing recipient of knowledge. They didn't want to hear about what you had to say because they already felt like they kind of knew, whatever it was. So the answer again is I don't prefer an overseas kid. If we're being honest, I prefer a San Antonio kid because if I just get to pick and I can control all the variables, I'm very, very much tied to the city. So I'd probably prefer a San Antonio kid, but I think it's correlation without causation. The reality is I don't prefer an international kid over a local kid or whatever. The reality is I prefer a less entitled, higher IQ, mentally tough player. And again, in a generalization, a kid growing up in Romania is not carrying the same amount of entitlement as a lower middle class kid going to Clark in San Antonio. Like the kids we have in the States, the poorest kids in the United States that can break barriers of entry and have someone realize their talent are still growing up with access to a basketball. The majority of the rest of the planet doesn't have access to a basketball. we are going to inherently carry some entitlement just by the nature of our surroundings, right? A lot of times there's a general lack of appreciation for an opportunity by an American kid, and it's not even their fault. It doesn't make them a bad kid. It just is they're a product of their circumstance. So I do tend to recruit internationally quite a bit because I lose a lot of that stuff. I mean, Forrest could tell you how many times we go out, on a road trip, Mark, and we'll eat, and we're eating at Chili's, and we give the guys a $18 or $20 limit. And as we're leaving the restaurant, 12 guys walk out. 6 of them weren't born in the United States. We got 6 thank yous for my meal. And it happened to be all 6 that weren't born in the United States. Like, I'm not making that up. Does that mean there's not an American kid that won't say thank you for my meal? No, he exists. He's just not the guy I see very often. You know what I mean? So I appreciate the appreciation. I appreciate the humility they come with most of the time. Again, in a generalization, the international kids, for the most part, in my experiences, have just been a lot of fun to coach.
Yeah, it's been a refreshing podcast because it hits a lot of home for me too. When my parents come out and they see my kids, you don't think my mom has things to say about my kids? And I love what you said. Like, my kids are spoiled. They're entitled. They're spoiled, but it's not their fault.
I got one too, Mark.
Right.
My
So
little
there we
man,
go.
JT, is the most spoiled kid in San Antonio, Texas, especially when it comes to basketball. That kid's in there rebounding for Steph Castle, and he's running around in the middle of a collegiate game, drawing plays. And he is so out of touch with reality, man. He has no idea. He goes to Spurs games and he high-fiving coaches, and players are pointing at him, and he just think that's normal. And I'm just like, man, you have no clue. Like, and he's going to be that kid. He's going to not thank somebody for his meal someday. And it's just going to be full circle coming back to old Coach Dial. Your kid was a butthole too, man. He didn't say thank you either.
Real conversations, though. I love it. That's what it's all about. Good stuff. One more question, then we'll go, because this parent really wanted me to ask it. So they actually have an unsigned senior. So Dial, same for you. What advice for unsigned seniors reaching out to coaches? Because it's tough, man. It's tough for high school kids. So what you got on that one?
I would say to a lot of parents in this city, and I was going to mention this earlier, and it doesn't answer this question directly, but I think there's an indirect piece to it. We have a multitude of community colleges in San Antonio. No high school players are right now in their senior year thinking, I can't wait to sign with San Antonio College. I can't wait to put on a jersey at Palo Alto. I can't wait to go compete at St. Philip's. I can't wait to meet my coach at Northwest Vista. I can't wait to travel with Northeast Lakeview to Olu or Strength in Motion or whatever. Here's the reality. I go to those games. I catch Coach Alcala, playing Coach Green, San Antonio College in Palo Alto. I coached a young man named Ruben Monzon at Olu that is a record holder and will be. And I saw his, big goofy butt running up and down on the east side between Eisenhower and Ritterman at what used to be Alamo City Baptist Church or whatever, and then it was a mall and whatever, but they got that gym in the back, and he was playing for Texas A&M San Antonio when it was just a club team, and pulled him out, and he's a first ballot, first team all conference guy his junior and senior year. There are opportunities if you'll humble yourself, set your pride aside a little bit. If no one has called you and you've played in front of coaches and you've used some of the services that are out there to get exposed and you didn't get that opportunity, if you're the guy you think you are, then go get your basics done the cheapest you can possibly do them at still a quality educational standpoint, and go play for one of these coaches that actually care about their roster and get in front of somebody. You know what I mean? Because game is going to speak at some point. If you're in that league and you're averaging 14 rebounds a game, I'm interested. I want to know how night in and night out you're getting 14 boards a game playing in a community college league. We're going to find you, and so will somebody else. So I would add that in there for a parent that's got a kid, an unsigned senior, and they're getting desperate. Don't forget that in your backyard, there are some very capable coaches that can platform you. So I just think it's a good network. I think it's better than nothing for sure. And I think a lot of guys are missing opportunities to go compete without burning eligibility and still chipping away at their academic progress when they're just dead set on playing at a certain level that they may not be ready to play at.
Yep. Love it. Great answer. I appreciate that. Good stuff. All right. Let's close on some quick hitters. So first one, FIBA or NBA?
NBA.
FIBA for me.
pass or score first point guard?
It's a loaded question.
It is, but you got to pick one. Today's game's changed.
You gotta catch and shoot, and you gotta drive to score if you're gonna be a good passer. So I'm gonna say score first.
Okay, love it.
Which is contrary to what I'm coaching every day, but the reality is you got.
I won with a pass first, so.
All right, so we're still split on both of the first two. All right, we're talking about screening, off-ball screen or on-ball screening.
I gotta choose.
Yeah, I mean, do you like both? Or you got to pick one. Off ball, okay.
Yeah, that off ball, you got to be. We want like 5-1. If we can get 3-1, we're winning more than we're losing.
All right, like it. All right. Each of you, one word to describe your coaching style.
Passionate.
Oof, man, one word. I would say humility.
Next one, home or road games?
I spent my whole career on the road, so just please give me some home games.
You be on time? I want to make sure you're on time for a home game.
Yes. Yeah, that's right.
I ain't got to go nowhere.
Love it.
Yeah, I'll say home. It's good to be in San Antonio.
All right, last one. You're locked for the NCAA men's champion this year.
I'm going to have to go. I'm going to pull for U of H.
Okay.
I got you.
Man, you stole mine.
You can go both.
We're real fortunate, man. Coach Sampson and his staff have been really good to myself, my family, and my staff over the years. So we're always pulling for those guys. I'll throw a dark horse because I can't have the same answer as Forrest. So I'll go put $10 on this in Vegas. I'll say Creighton.
All right. Well, fellas, I appreciate you both coming on. It's been a really good podcast, a different podcast too, from the other ones we've had. Some really good information, both from your backgrounds, both being from here. And it's just been enlightening to hear from both of you. Very refreshing for me. I appreciate all the stories you're saying about over Europe. Got me. I think I need to get on the phone and call some family members today as well. So I'm very excited about your program. I know the wins and loss record wasn't what you wanted this year, but I love the direction you're going. I'm very excited for what you guys have got going on in the future and for just San Antonio basketball whole. So thank you both for coming on. I really appreciate it. And I know we'll be talking to you guys soon. All right. So take care.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Dropping Dimes podcast. Make sure to go follow us on IG at Dropping Dimes Pod. Remember, each Friday we'll be dropping a new episode. So hit the follow and bell notification buttons to never miss any content. Let's get better together. We out.